Okay, pnawn da, croeso to our final session of this afternoon here at the Ignite stage. It's in partnership with Vodafone Business. It is being recorded, the panel is being recorded, and there will be a chance for you to ask, hopefully, for some questions, get your questions ready for later on. We'll be going on till about 4 o'clock. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand you over to our chair and our panel. Please welcome Nicki Lyons from Vodafone and our panel. Nicki.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone, good afternoon. It's lovely to be here in lovely Wales. Second time in a week, which feels like quite an achievement, Paul, as well. Did you stay the weekend?
Yes, I did.
Oh, very cool. So it's really a pleasure to join you all here at Wales Tech Week, where we're celebrating the power of technology to transform communities across Wales and beyond. So really big ambition there. At VodafoneThree, our mission is to build the UK's best network. We believe the value comes from connecting every nation, every town, every community, ensuring no one's left behind. And this is it's coming to the end now of what's been a really big year for us. Vodafone and Three merged, creating the UK's largest mobile operator, which unlocked new opportunities for our 29 million customers and the country. £11 billion investment in the UK, 600 million plus in Wales. So delivering real change, not just in big cities, but in hard to reach parts of the UK as well. And as well as building the best network, we want to ensure the benefits are felt by all, which is what this conversation is about here today. Connectivity isn't enough if too many people remain excluded from it, and closing the digital divide is a really big challenge. So I'm delighted to be joined by a panel of experts, all of whom are doing great things to drive digital inclusion. And we're going to explore how collaboration, investment, ambition, and our collective efforts can close the digital divide and create a future-ready Wales. So if I can start by asking each of you to just introduce yourselves, maybe talk a little bit about your organisation and your focus as well. Should we start with you, Emma? Is that okay?
Thanks, Nicki. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Stone. I'm Director of Evidence and Engagement at a non-profit, a charity called Good Things Foundation. We're the UK's leading digital inclusion charity. And actually, this panel is brilliant because we've got Nicki representing here, one of our strategic partners. VodafoneThree have been a brilliant partner to us. Joe from Cwmpas, we've been delighted to be a brilliant partner to Joe's organisation in work in Wales for the last 6 years, and are looking forward to continuing to do that. And maybe the only other thing to mention is that I've also been involved from the start in some work called the Minimum Digital Living Standard for Wales, which is something that Wales and the Welsh Government has really held on to. And used to put at the heart of Welsh Government's vision for digital inclusion. So I'll be happy to say a little bit more about that later, but that's something about me.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jo Lovell, Director of Inclusive Communities at Cwmpas. We were formerly the Wales Cooperative Centre. We are also a not-for-profit. I say that profit is good. It's what we do with the profit. It's what counts. Of course, you need to make profit, otherwise you wouldn't be a business. So we've been established for 40 years, support the development of social enterprises and basically helping communities identify the key problems and the challenges they have and how they can kind of solve those for themselves with a little bit of support and facilitation. So we cover a whole host of different projects that we run that ranges from housing, like I said, through to setting up cooperatives, different enterprises, but a big part of our work, and it has been for the last 20 years, is delivering Pan Wales digital inclusion interventions. It's great to say now that roughly 4% of people in Wales are still classed as digitally excluded, but I put a caveat out on that, and we can talk about that later on. Thanks.
Good one here. Thank you. I guess the benefit of the last slot of the day means that at least 50% of the audience knows me. But for those that don't, I'm Paul Taylor. I'm Head of Public Sector for Vodafone Business. And essentially, I have a team of brilliant people who work with our public sector customers and institutions day in, day out. And really one of the things at the forefront of their mind is how they really help those institutions make a difference for the citizens of the UK, for Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and of course England. So that's me and what I do.
Hi everybody, I'm Dija Oliver. I'm a project manager at the Swansea Bay City Deals Digital Infrastructure Programme. We're very much focused on the connectivity piece, so making sure that nobody is left behind on that broadband journey. But it's equally important to us that people do have those skills. And we've done quite a lot of exciting things actually with some of the social value that we've been able to leverage in through the projects that we deliver. So I'll talk about that a little bit later on too.
Fantastic, thank you. Dija, why don't we start with you as you're holding the mic? So I've got a question actually for everybody, but just some thoughts on as we roll out improved technology and expand coverage across Wales, how do we ensure that everyone can benefit, and not just being by connected, but obviously digital skills, confidence, devices, all of these things are important. How do we ensure people use everything they need, have access to everything they need and use it meaningfully?
Probably would have made sense for me to go last on this one because I think everybody here can speak much more to that than I can. I'm going to stay with the connectivity piece first because certainly within Wales and definitely within the region that I'm here to represent, the connectivity piece hasn't been completed yet, so we do need to remain focused on that. We still have people with really poor broadband, so as a programme, we're really monitoring that landscape, but certainly moving forwards, we can see that the roles within our team need to evolve and certainly look at the inclusion piece more in its entirety. But at the moment, I'd say we still do need to stay focused on the connectivity too.
When we met on Friday, we were talking about the donation of SIM cards that Vodafone is making in Swansea Bay. You gave some really interesting perspectives on who will be using those and how they will benefit. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we funded a project called the National Institute of Sport and Health, and Vodafone are a partner with that. So delivering the mobile infrastructure to enable some of the use cases there, and the social value behind that particular project was the SIM cards. When that actually came to board, Jim's always attributing this to me, but it wasn't me. When we took that to our board, they were like, that's great, being able to give people the SIMs, but actually if somebody is struggling with data poverty, it's highly likely that they also don't have access to a device either. So it was at that point that collectively then we were signposted across to the Good Things Foundation. So from our perspective as a programme, we're working really closely with Nish to make sure that those devices get to the right people alongside the SIMs. The strapline of our programme is connectivity through collaboration, but I think that extends to inclusion as well. We're very much, like I say, infrastructure focused, but we're trying to support wherever we can, whether that's through communications, through the contracts that we have as a programme. But yeah, so that's what we've been doing with that.
Fantastic, thank you. Paul, same question to you. How do we make sure in everything that we're doing in Wales that everybody benefits?
Yeah, so I think for me and the whole Vodafone team, the first thing when supporting public sector is it's really vital to recognise that digital inclusion means something different across all of the segments. So, for example, our NHS and health customers, and the challenges they face are very different if you're a local authority compared to a central government institution, for example. And I think when we're looking at creating social value offerings for customers, we really need and try to consider the needs of the communities that they serve. And it can be very different across regions. So I really think the vital thing for us is listening to the needs of the different institutions, of their citizens, and really crafting a response that means we can act in a very impactful way. And that's essentially the way our team approaches.
Fantastic, thank you. Joe, what do you think? I mean, clearly there is a challenge here in Wales, and you've said, down to the last 4% from the work that you've been doing over the last 20 years. That's pretty amazing. Talk to us about how you got there and whether you think that last piece is, I guess, the hardest bit.
Okay, thanks. So
As I said, that 4% is with a caveat. So we were at 7% 2 years ago, and the latest national survey for Wales, but it was only a 6,000 sample, so that's quite small when you put it into context. So we are kind of putting that 4% with a caveat, and it's quite a crude, do you use the internet, don't you? And we know that actually there's a lot more than that, because a lot of people might be able to use the internet, but it doesn't mean to say they've got the connectivity, the device, the confidence, you know, the know how to get online safely, all of those sorts of things. I think really importantly for me, working in partnership is absolutely critical if we're ever going to get as many people as possible online, because we can't just do it as an organisation. It takes everyone coming together, and that's at a strategic level, it's about a policy level, and then ultimately to the organisations who are working on the ground face to face with citizens, because that's not something our programme does directly, although we run other projects that does citizen interventions. But it's how we can support those partnerships to upskill themselves, to understand the importance of digital inclusion, and how then they can go on and help their customers. So it's that real, for me, that micro-localised delivery is really, really important, and that those organisations understand the support structures and the landscape that's available to help them then. So Emma mentioned about the minimum digital living standard earlier. So the whole focus now around Welsh Government's latest digital inclusion programme that we'll be delivering over the next 6 years with the Good Things Foundation is underpinned by that approach of having a minimum standard. So it's how do we get everyone in Wales, every household, to be able to engage in a digital society if they want to. And to do that, there's a minimum number of things they're going to need to be able to do that. But I think we have to remember as well that digital inclusion is not linear. You know, 1 minute I could be in work, so I'm really upskilled on the latest tech, my understanding of it, how to stay safe online. I lose my job. I no longer have a device. I can't afford the connectivity. So we can't, that 4% is definitely a caveat, because it changes and it'll fluctuate. So I always say, you know, I'm working now, but in 20 years' time, I'd like to think I've retired by then, hopefully. But who knows, depending on pensions, we'll see. But if I've retired, then I'm not going to be using the same skill sets, the same devices. And then actually, am I going to be left behind, because we see the way and the pace and the speed of AI and tech evolving. So yeah, I think the key things for me, it's about partnerships, localized delivery, everyone pulling together and doing what they can do. So it's not expecting a single organisation to do everything, but it's being able to kind of put the pieces together in a jigsaw in a way that supports everyone that's on the ground. Thanks.
Fantastic. And Emma, of course, actually both Joe and Dija kind of referenced you without referencing you, but you know, a lot of that final piece of the puzzle is what Good Things Foundation does, not just the distributing devices, but also the digital skills. Can you talk to us a little bit about the work that you're doing in both in Wales and how you kind of are getting closer to closing the digital divide, or perhaps not?
Yes, so Good Things Foundation, I think one of the things that we've been doing, which I think is so important and valuable, is for over 10 years we've been building up a UK-wide network of libraries, community centres, there might be jobs clubs, there might be carer cafes, there are some GP practices in there, there are more local authority teams, there are some retail outlets as well. It's a really, really diverse network of organisations that we sometimes describe as a big club with a shared vision. And a lot of them are tiny, but they have reach and they have relationships with some of the most underserved communities across the country. And what they also all have is a recognition that actually the people who are using their services or that are in their communities will face one or maybe multiple barriers. And for some people, the primary barrier might be that they cannot afford a suitable device, or they can't afford to keep their mobile data topped up, or they're unable maybe to get a contract because they're living in temporary accommodation. And for other people, it will be more about the skills piece. It'll be about a lack of confidence, You might especially find that if people are maybe unemployed or they're living alone and that they don't have that social circle of people that they can rely on, or they don't want to have to rely on family and friends to help them to get online. So the digital barriers people face can be many and varied. And what that means is there's kind of no one solution. So therefore, what we found to be a really important approach is how do you support and strengthen the people who have those relationships, who have that reach, who have that trust. And that's where, with VodafoneThree and others' support, being able to go, we can get free mobile data packages out to you so you can give those out to the people who need them. We have online learning resources. They're online, but they were designed for use face-to-face in libraries and other settings, so that those organisations aren't constantly having to reinvent the wheel with different resources. And I think increasingly, and I think this goes to that invisibility point, also, there will be people for whom they might be able to afford a device. They might have a smartphone. It might not be that affordability is their biggest barrier. They might be able to, they might choose to want to prioritise that over other things. And they might have some digital skills. Maybe they're using social media. But actually, when it comes to engaging with something like, Paul, you were mentioning hospitals, the NHS, or if we talk about government services or things to do with banks, those things that have that more formal edge where the stakes are higher and the risks about scams and, those fears can be greater, that's when you get into this confidence piece. So it's also about how do you provide that trusted support to help build that digital confidence.
And do you see any particular issues in Wales that you don't see in other parts of the UK?
So I think you can have an everywhere is different perspective. And also there are so many commonalities across so many different places. I mentioned a bit ago about the minimum digital living standard for Wales. I think if I just say a couple of words about that, then that might help answer the question. So the minimum digital living standard for Wales is a way of asking the public what do they think a household needs today to feel and be digitally included. And there was actually a very, very long and rigorous research process with some of the leading universities in the UK, working with members of the public through a really structured, deliberative process. And what they ended up with was a core set of what you need. If you imagine a house, in the bottom set, the ground floor, you've got your devices and your connectivity. On the first floor, that's when you think about your practical skills, like being able to manage a device, monitor your data, do a practical task like a Google search. And in the top floor and in the chimney, you've got things to do with the critical thinking skills, evaluating whether or not to share information online, managing those social pressures, all the things that to do with harms and pressures. And what members of the public through this process really brought out was that all those things in combination are needed. Now, actually, that definition holds true when we've then done additional focus groups in Wales, also in Scotland. It really resonates. It resonates in urban areas, in rural areas with different household types. But the barriers to achieving that core definition, that is where there can be variation. And that is where some of the issues that Dija was talking about, in terms of in some places it might be remote rural challenges, in some places it might be actually it's urban cold spots or it's issues with way leaves and planning that might get in the way. In some areas it'll depend on the population profile. But I would say that what do we feel we're expected to need in our society is common across the UK.
It's very interesting. And when you think about the rural-urban divide, there's always an assumption that different parts of the country have a very different connectivity experience.
I think it's so much more complicated than that, isn't it?
Absolutely. So Dija, coming back to you, way over there. Hello. You talked a little bit about infrastructure, but I just want to talk a bit more about infrastructure projects and social value initiatives. How do they combined ensure that rural communities aren't left behind?
Yeah, so for us, it's very much baked into what we do as public sector in terms of our procurement. So we have social value. It's 100% not a tick box exercise. We want that to have a meaningful impact. But what's been really nice, and there's a couple of people in the room who know this, people that we've worked with have been really flexible about that. So when we've awarded the contract and then we've gone to look at the social value piece, going back to the 3,000 SIM cards and the devices, that need was recognised instantly on both sides and it was addressed. But we've had similar situations in every single one of our contracts. But they've also come together quite nicely. So you'd think there could be an opportunity for duplication, but actually it's been quite holistic in the approach. So we've been through one of our contracts, we've got free fibre broadband for some community centres, and they've committed to registering to the Good Things Foundation. Probably going to be distribution points for the SIM cards. So bringing all of those together has been really, really nice, but it's been the flexibility on the industry side was the piece that didn't necessarily expect, so it's been really welcomed, yeah.
So I have to ask a slightly provocative question. Thinking of social value kind of baked into the industry piece versus government and responsibility to deliver, do you see a difference in behaviours on each side? Does everyone kind of play the role they're supposed to, or is there overlap or crossover or gaps in the middle?
I think when you're at the procurement stage, that one is when it can be seen quite differently, because I think especially large organisations, they don't have that local knowledge. So we're expecting something that we may not get through that, but like I say, when it's placed on the value and then it's worked through as actually how can we make this work, that's when bringing our local teams together, and also the fact that we're not delivering it, it's the charities and the community interest companies that are doing it. So a lot of the time it's been done through digital inclusion funds, where we say we've got this pot of money. What can you do? You know what the need is within those communities. Please use that in the best possible way. And then we've applied things like the minimum, I'm going to say it wrong, digital learning. So we've been able to apply that as part of the scoring matrix to make sure that we award it in the right way.
Oh, fantastic. So Paul, coming back to you, we obviously work closely with lots of different public sector partners to deliver different programs of activity, and as everybody's actually said, it's partnership, but it's different every time. What are we doing, I guess, that you're most proud of to reach those most at risk of digital exclusion?
So I think, Nicki, there's a couple of things really. So as part of the merger, VodafoneThree's made a commitment to build a new digital infrastructure for the UK and for Wales. And actually we're going to spend about 610 million in investment in Wales building that network. And we think that's probably one of the largest, if not the largest, private sector investment over the next 3 to 5 years. But we want to do more. And I think as part of that commitment, we will bring high-speed, high-capacity connectivity to every school and every hospital. But we still need to do more, because then it's about how do we help those schools and hospitals make the most of that high-speed connectivity. So my team, as an example, is working with some integrated care boards so that we can really lean into the challenge of increasing adoption of the NHS app, for example. And that's making sure that individuals in the community have the access to the technology and the skills to use the app to its fullest effect, but also actually working with staff in the NHS to make sure they've got the digital skills to respond to it. So I think there's so much we are going to do, and we need to do more, and we need to move faster, and we need to really lean into the social value change that the country needs.
That's fantastic to hear you say that. Really makes me very proud. So Jo, coming back to you now, what have you learned about hidden exclusion in Welsh communities? I think you're really, the expert in this space. Tell us what you've learned and how you think. I mean, obviously, we've talked quite a bit about partnership, but it's that community-led programme of activity that seems to have the most impact.
Okay, so through the probably last 10 years of the digital inclusion programmes that we were delivering across Wales, we did a lot of work with what we class as excluded groups. And I always find that interesting because sometimes they're called seldom heard voices, sometimes they're called hard to reach. Are they really? Or is it just that they don't engage in the way that we expect people to engage? How are we trying to reach out to those people? And I think sometimes we've got to flip it on its head and kind of understand, why aren't those people talking to us? Why aren't they engaging with health services? Why aren't they engaging, whichever service it is that's going online? So I think that's really important to think about how we reach out to people. So we've done a lot of work with specific groups, one of those being Gypsy Roma traveller communities. We have a lot of those in Wales, and if you've ever worked with those communities, you'll understand that actually welcoming people in doesn't normally happen. Having strangers talking to them about stuff to do. The children generally don't stay in school for long if they go to school at all. So there's a whole host of things they're missing out on. So we've done a piece of work that's probably been ongoing for about 2 years now, where we've worked with organisations that support those communities. So again, it comes back to being trusted by the people that you're supporting. I couldn't walk into a Gypsy Roma traveller site and say, right, let me show you how to use a device. And these are all the reasons why you want to go. I don't look like those people, I don't sound like them, I don't understand their culture fully, so they're not going to engage with me in a way that's going to be beneficial for anyone at all. So it's really, really important that the work that we do is done through those trusted faces and organise. And quite often, and Emma pointed out to this, they're really small organisations, but the work they're doing is so vital. And then it's our role about giving them the skills, and everything they need to be able to then to go on and support the people they're working with. I think there's something in terms of the Welsh language as well. So with the previous programme, we delivered a lot of training to organisations, but we never just translated from English to Welsh. I'm not Welsh speaker myself, but it's really important that if we're training people, we do it in the language, and we write the training and deliver the training in first language Welsh. So that was something that we did. So we had a huge uptake in the amount of training we did through Welsh. And a lot of older communities, especially Welsh-speaking rural communities, don't engage with digital much at all. So for us to be able to reach out to them in a way that they would engage was really, really important. So I think it is about stopping and thinking. And sometimes groups that, there's priority groups that we talk about in the digital exclusion or inclusion world, whichever way you want to look at it. So they're generally people with low educational attainment, people with disabilities, long-term or life-limiting health conditions, and older people. They're always the groups we talk about. But in every walk of society, there's people who are excluded digitally. But I always think it's our role to understand why, what are the barriers. So we did a lot of work around what are the hooks to get somebody to engage, because, you talked about it. If you say to somebody, you need to open an online bank account, why? Why do they need to do that? Actually, the only people they might see is go into their local building society or bank in a whole week. So why would they want to suddenly do it online? Do they feel safe and secure doing that? They'd be worried about their money, especially if somebody's older. Well, anyone would be. So for me, it's really, really important that we kind of understand those barriers, and then we try and encourage people to show them that actually tech can be beneficial to their lives. So rather than thinking about it, what's in it for me as a business? What's in it for that person? How can I motivate that person to see that tech can actually be so beneficial for them, and they can engage as much or as little as they want with it, but it could make a real difference to their life. So, Paul, you mentioned about the NHS Wales Lab. So we've done loads of work with people across Wales around that. And for me, that could be massive. If people can start making their own appointments online, I know the way it's rolled out, so it's not everything's working in every part of Wales, so it's a little bit different what people can access at any point in time. But actually, for people to be able to do things like that, so they're not sat on the phone for hours trying to get an appointment and they can't get it, that they can access their medical records, get repeat prescriptions. It's time saving for them. Maybe because of their condition, they can't go outside or can't need support to get outside. It reduces that. So there's so many benefits. But for me, it's thinking about what's in it for that person and why would they want to engage. And then we take them on that journey. And then once they get the hook, so we've done loads of stuff in care homes with VR headsets and doing reminiscence with dementia patients and just showing them, taking them back to the places that they were born in or songs that they really relate to. And the benefits are absolutely massive. So sometimes it's less about the device, the connectivity, it's more about the hook. And once you find that, it is so, so powerful and you've got somebody on that journey, and then it's our role to kind of carry on that journey then.
Oh, that's really great to hear. I think there's also something in there, isn't there, about if your local branch closes, you might not want to bank online, but you might actually have no choice. And how do we make sure that connectivity is also a safety net for people? Presumably the care homes that you visit as well are cash strapped, and connectivity can help them too.
Yeah, that's absolutely vital. So going back to the pandemic, when it first hit and we went into lockdowns, we did a massive piece of work as an organisation. We phoned every care home across Wales because obviously they were moving to GP consultancy consultations online. I can't remember the name of the platform now. It was so many years ago. Feels like it was anyway. And what we needed to do was to make sure every care home in Wales had connectivity and had devices, so at least their residents would be able to do their online GP appointments, as well as then keeping in touch with relatives. We phoned every single care home in Wales. I can't remember the number now. I want to say it was about 500 odd. And then we kind of went through the connectivity they've got. And for some of them, they had connectivity, but it was just lucky that the one I can't remember which part of Wales they were in, but the building was so old. So even though the connectivity was there, it couldn't actually get through. So the signal inside the building, so they had to set up something, I don't even know what it was, but he was really good techie-wise, and he set something up so he actually managed to tap into it and get the access they needed. We ended up distributing, I think it was about 2,500 devices across all of those care homes, and then developing training, delivering the training, obviously everything with masks on because it was during the lockdown. I have to put it out to the staff because we said to staff, look, we need to get this stuff out to care homes. Would anybody be willing to do this? Nobody has to. And all of our staff were willing to go out to care homes in a really dangerous and vulnerable time. But the difference that made, and some of the videos and stuff we've captured afterwards, so the connectivity probably saved people's lives during them because they couldn't have gone to a GP. You know, we were all on lockdown. We weren't allowed out anywhere, so it kept people safe. But it just shows the importance of connectivity, but also the challenge, because like you say, you might have the connectivity there, but the building's so old and the walls are so thick that it doesn't actually get to where you need it to be in that building. And like you say, with the banks closing down, that one of the biggest fears of older people going online to do things like banking is that safety. How do I know my money's going to be safe? And, you know, for younger people, they sometimes say that to us, and we say, do you use Facebook? Probably not, actually, if they're that young. That shows my age now, doesn't it? Yeah. But they'll put stuff on Facebook, but they have no idea what information they're actually sharing and how much can be found out about them. And probably setting up an online bank account and banking online is far more safe than anything else you could do. But again, if you're somebody that doesn't use digital a lot, then why would you believe that? So again, it comes back to that hook. Let's hook people and take them on the journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I realise what you've really done is answered our main question, is the digital divide getting smaller or more invisible? Potentially it's just kind of slipping below the surface. Yeah, really interesting. We've got about 5 minutes left. I wanted to ask if there were questions in the room. Does anyone have any questions for the panel? Surely somebody has something to ask. Shall I just keep going then? I have tons of questions. Oh,
For somebody who might want to get involved as perhaps as a small business opportunity, or to go out and just work in the community somehow, what would be a good approach as an individual to go in and get involved?
Who wants to answer that one?
Okay, so that's always a challenge. Digital and volunteering, and then how do you do that? Where do you go to do it? So if you're based in Wales, I would probably, a starting point would be really good with the WCVA, so the Wales Council for Voluntary Organisations, because on there they'll have a lot of volunteering opportunities. Because again, if you want to go out and support people in the community, then it's quite good. You need to have your DPS checks and stuff like that, just in case you're going to be left alone with a vulnerable individual. So you need to make sure all stuff like that's in place. Definitely WCVA would be a starting point. Maybe even your local library. So Emma's talked about the hub network. Most libraries across Wales now are connected to that, and I am absolutely sure they would love to have people going in there volunteering. I think as an organisation, so something that we'd established with the previous programme was the Digital Inclusion Alliance Wales, and we had about 140 organisations across Wales, public, private, third sector, really small. You know, we say SMEs, we're talking micro SMEs in Wales, aren't we? Smaller organisations, smaller charities, right through to, you know, health boards and larger organisations, local authorities. That finished because the contract ended. Obviously, we've got the new programme starting, and we're going to be establishing a new type of network of organisations. And we're looking for every size organisation who wants to play a part in closing that digital divide in Wales. So we'll be putting communications out about that over the coming months. Don't know exactly what the name's going to be. There's nobody from Welsh Government in here. I think it's going to be something like the Digital Inclusion Wales Alliance, if I'm allowed to say that. I think that's what it's going to be called, but not 100% sure. So, yeah, keep a lookout for that as well, because we'd love to get as many organisations on board. But, yeah, definitely local libraries or anywhere like that would be a good starting point.
Building on that, I just think it might be worth mentioning a couple of other things, because there's something here that is a real theme about that collaboration across, you know, corporates, across businesses of all different sizes, thinking about community sector, public sector. Nicki, one of the things that I think VodafoneThree and Good Things Foundation have been really brilliant at is about thinking about devices as well, and how do you square this circle of the fact that we know that not everyone can afford a suitable device, and we also know that in companies as well as households across the country, there are unused, unwanted devices. And not all of those are suitable, but there is so much that can be done with them. And so the National Device Bank has built up as a model which is around inviting donations of tech, retired tech, end-of-life tech from businesses and public sector, and thinking what can be recycled as recycled, what can be refurbished and to a high standard and distributed out through those local organisations, so that you're getting devices into the hands of people who really need them. But taking that a step further, we've worked together along with Deloitte to go, government, you need to be doing more of this at a UK level. And there is now an IT Reuse for Good charter, which is government-backed, as a way of really trying to shift the dial on how organisations think about devices when they come to the end of their life within a business. And I think it speaks to your point, because it's about the more we're recognising this as an issue that we all have an interest in, a vested interest in, whether we come from a social, an economic, a cultural, an entertainment, a health perspective. Digital is influencing, stretching across everyone's lives, and we want everyone to be able to benefit from that. And so I think we're always looking for different ways in which we can go, what are the assets, the networks, the resources, the skills that you've got? And yes, let's really use those to address this challenge.
No, that's a really good point, Emma. I think one of the interesting things actually about the device bank is how easy it is to get involved in it. So we've had numerous conversations with actually customers, big and small, who want to be part of this, and it's a very simple, easy way to get involved. If you are giving your employees a treat of a brand new set of laptops or mobile phones, what happens to those old devices? They end up stuck in a drawer, and actually to donate them and give them a second life and have them wiped clean safely and then given to somebody who will use them to stay connected. That's just a gift, really. Any more questions from anybody?
So you mentioned earlier the fact that we have these initiatives on there in situ, describing if you don't expose the game. What are the KPIs that you're using to actually measure the success of those initiatives?
They're quite varied. It depends on the individual projects. Most of it is the number of people that they've helped. Actually bring those stories to life as well. So sometimes it's not about as many people as possible. It's, you know, they can be quite small organisations that are delivering these digital inclusion funds on our behalf. And we've already had some really lovely stories come out of them, but they tend to be very much focused around the different cohorts, what skills they've left with. A lot of the time, like I say, we're then able to align them with giving them a device and then measuring that 6 months later. They're all in their very early stages, so I'd love to give you some actual more real life stories, but there's a couple that we've done through Age Cymru Dyfed, where we had a lady who she had always wanted to go to Kathmandu to see the Monkey Temple, and she used VR headsets to do that, and it's a beautiful photograph of this lady telling us about it, and it's just one of those real moments. We're hoping to get more of those, really, but yeah, they're varied between all the different projects. Joe?
Ooh, how do we measure ours? I guess because a big part of our work is delivering against the Welsh Government contract. So the measures, they're probably going to be different in the next one because we are moving towards that minimum digital living standard underpinning everything. But traditionally we're measured on the number of organisations that we support to embed digital inclusion. So for us, that's taking them on a journey. It'll mean committing to the Digital Inclusion Charter and then actually working towards accreditation. So not just a tick box exercise to say, yep, we've signed up to the Charter. It's more about, well, okay, where's the action plan that's going to sit behind that? What does that look like for you as a business? Taking them on that journey through to getting that accredited and then looking at what else they can do. We were measured on the number of people that we reached. Either that was directly through the training that the programme delivered or indirectly, which included the training that people would have done through the Good Things Foundation hubs, or we did a model of every one person that was trained in an organisation would go on and support 5 individuals. So there was a multiplier effect. So yeah, so the metrics probably change quite a bit across different programmes, I think, but ultimately it is looking more at an outcomes basis. What difference does it make? And I can genuinely say over the 20 years that we've been delivering it, there's been an absolute shift from just about numbers to more about the outcomes. So what difference? We could train 20,000 people, but if it doesn't make any difference to their lives, what's the point in us doing it? So it's understanding the outcomes that you want to reach and then making sure that the outputs and the activities are actually taking you on that journey and they're the right things for the individuals as well.
That's fantastic. Do you want to answer that as well?
If you have a look on Good Things Foundation's website, we do have an area that includes our measurement and evaluation framework that any organisation can use. But also, we've been working with University of Liverpool and others to boil down to three questions that can be layered and used as a form of demographic variable, you know, alongside if you were doing survey research or customer research around income or housing and things like that. And the reason we've developed those is because we think the more those are used consistently, the more we will build up a better understanding across institutions, across Wales, across the UK, in terms of what this digital engagement really means. So a more nuance. So we won't be needing to ask that sort of question. We'll have a better understanding of that.
No, thank you. While you've still got the microphone, do you have any final remarks? Anything specific that you want to land that's specific to Wales that speaks to, I guess, the theme of this event?
I think there are really important things happening in Wales at the moment. And the layering on of the minimum digital living standard for Wales, the work that's already been happening, these sorts of collaborations, for me, as someone who's worked in a lot of different social justice sectors, and I'd be interested, Joe, if you share the same, the Digital Inclusion Challenge is uniquely one that does unite a lot of different types of organisation because we see how important this is for places, communities, for people across Wales, across the country. And I think that's why, Dija, your reflection that, there didn't seem to be as much kind of competition in a way, there's more flexibility here, people are wanting to come together. And I just think that's really exciting, absolutely essential, and let's harness it.
Fantastic. Joe, final thoughts?
Final thoughts for me. I always say Wales is a small enough place. If something can happen, it can happen here, if it's going to happen anywhere. So let's close that divide as much as we can. It's everyone's responsibility. Whether you're a business, whether you're public sector, whether you're third sector is irrelevant. We've all got a role to play in this. It's just understanding what your role is. That could be allowing your staff to do some volunteering in a library, as we just discussed, for instance, to help somebody who's digitally excluded to improve their skills. It could be that you've got devices, connectivity, there's lots of other ways that you can support, but just stop and have a think about what is your role to play in this. And I guess from a business perspective, don't always assume that all of your customers are digitally included, because they're probably not in a way that you would probably want them to be.
Brilliant, thank you. And just really building on the theme of the importance of places and communities, one of the things that we are looking to do as part of the digital infrastructure build is connect every rugby club across the country of Wales. So I think it's 300 odd. Gareth will keep me honest on the exact number. But we were discussing with some customers this morning, could we turn those into social hubs, digital inclusion hubs? I think there's so many ideas that we could bring to life as part of our private-public partnership. My closing comment is really just engage me, engage my team. We'd love to continue building the story for Wales.
I'm going to bring it back to the foundations of the house. The connectivity piece, like I said at the beginning, it's not done yet. We still need to stay focused on that, especially for some of our more rural and remote communities. And the only point I was going to bring in was around some of those KPIs. Actually, we've also seen operational benefits to the community centres themselves and the charities, where they've become more digital, and therefore by becoming more efficient, that's enabled them to go a little bit further as well, which is another nice, unexpected value added piece.
Yeah, no, it's hugely powerful, isn't it? Thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. I know it's been a bit quieter than perhaps we'd hoped, but it's been a really good discussion. I'm really grateful for all of you coming along and joining me today. Thank you.